Before we dive into the most miserable jobs of medieval history, I just want to say welcome. If you enjoy stories that explore the raw, forgotten sides of history in a way that feels real and human, this channel is for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps more people discover these stories. And if you're comfortable, let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time of day is it for you? It's always beautiful to see how far these stories travel. You wake up before the sun. The wind outside your thatched hut is sharp, biting through the holes in your cloak. Your hands are cold. Your stomach is empty. You haven't eaten since yesterday's crust of bread. But you rise anyway, because today, like every day, you have to walk into the swamp. Your name doesn't matter. No one in the village says it anymore. You're just the girl with the blood on her legs. The one who smells like mold and sickness. You are a leech collector, and this job, this thankless, aching job is the only reason you're not starving in a ditch. Out in the marshland, the world is quiet, too quiet. The fog hangs heavy, curling around your legs like spirits. The water is dark and cold. You step in slowly, your bare feet sinking into soft, rotten mud, and then you stand still. You don't move. You just wait. The leeches come quickly. They know you. They like you. Your blood is warm, and your skin is soft. First, one clings to your ankle, then another, then another. Before long, they're swarming up your calves, wriggling, attaching, drinking. You don't scream. You don't cry. You can't. If you flinch, they might vomit their last meal back into the wound. And that could mean infection, fever, death, so you let them feed. This is how you collect them. You are the bait. There are no tools, no nets, no gloves, just your skin, your body, your sacrifice. When the bucket is full, you climb out slowly. The sun has not yet risen. Your legs are covered in blood. The leeches dangle from you like ornaments. You scrape them off carefully one by one, dropping them into jars. They squirm, fat with your blood, ready to be sold to the village healer. And then you go home. Except you don't really have a home. You sleep in a shed behind the apothecary. He lets you stay there in exchange for your work. No one else will let you near them. The smell of swamp and rot clings to your skin no matter how much you scrub. Children whisper that you carry demons. Old women cross themselves when they see you. You are both needed and feared, essential and invisible. You work for medicine. Ironically, you get none of it. Doctors in grand cities use your leeches to cure the sick. They speak of balance and bloodletting, of humors and divine fluids. But they never speak of you, of the woman standing in freezing water at dawn, losing pints of blood just to keep their jars full. Your body grows weaker each week. The bites never heal. Some are infected, now red and swollen. Your legs feel heavy when you walk, like your own blood is turning against you. Sometimes you cough and see black spots float in your vision. You ignore it. You have to, because if you stop, you starve. There's an old story in your village. A woman named Elsbeth. She was a leech collector, too. They say one winter morning, she walked into the swamp and never came back. They found her days later, frozen stiff, her face still calm, her legs still bleeding. The leeches were still attached. No one held a funeral. No priest said her name. They just moved on. You don't want to end up like Elsbeth, but deep down, you know you will. This is not a job you retire from. It is a job you disappear into. And yet, without you, people would die. The nobleman's fever would never break. The baker's infected arm would swell until it burst. The midwife's prayers would be useless without your leeches pulling the bad blood away. You are the unseen engine of healing, and yet not even the sick will touch your hand. So when people today say they hate their job, when they complain about long meetings or bad Wi-Fi or lukewarm coffee, I want you to remember her, the woman in the swamp, shivering, silent, bleeding in the dawn. Missed, she didn't get health insurance, or overtime pay, or even a thank you. She got bitten and then she came back the next day. Because someone had to. You might think your job is the worst. Maybe your boss is annoying, or your office chair gives you back pain. Maybe you're underpaid or overworked. But what if I told you there were people in medieval times whose jobs were so horrible, so unspeakably filthy, that they weren't even allowed to walk among other people during the day? They only came out at night, not because they were criminals, but because their very existence reminded everyone of something they wanted to forget. They were called Gong farmers, and they were, quite literally, the people who cleaned human waste from the toilets of medieval towns. Yes, poop in medieval England. People didn't have toilets that flushed, or pipes that whisked things away. They had small wooden outhouses with a hole in the seat that dropped waste into a cesspit below. Over time, that pit would fill, and someone had to go down there and remove it all. That someone was the Gong farmer. You'd work only at night, not because it was cooler or more peaceful, but because the stench, especially under the sun, was unbearable, and because no one wanted to see your face. You'd carry a single flickering lantern and a shovel, walking slowly through narrow alleys toward a cesspit you'd emptied before, or maybe one that had never been touched. Then you'd lift the rotting wooden lid, breathe in the thick, sour air of generations' worth of human waste, and descend the ladder into darkness, the walls around you wet with decay, your boots sinking into a brown, bubbling sludge of the town's filth. It wasn't just feces. It was urine, rotting food, dead animals. Sometimes things even worse, and you'd start shoveling into buckets again and again and again. Sometimes you had a partner on top, hauling it up and dumping it into carts. Other times you'd have to climb out yourself, shoulder each sloshing bucket, and walk it down the road to a dumping ground outside the city walls, or worse, it to the home of someone who wanted it. Because, yes, people used it. It was fertilizer. Some even burned it for fuel. It never ended, and it was dangerous. The pits could collapse. The gases could knock you out. Methane, hydrogen sulfide, one deep breath could kill you. And if you fell unconscious down there, there was no one coming to get you. There are stories, horrific ones, of Gong farmers who drowned in human waste, their screams echoing up through the wooden floorboards of nearby homes before fading forever. But even when you survived, your body paid the price. The constant exposure to filth meant infections were normal. Your skin cracked, your lungs burned, your eyes stung constantly from ammonia. The smell, it stayed with you. No matter how many times you bathed in rivers or rubbed your hands with vinegar and herbs, the stink clung to your skin, your clothes, your soul. And so society pushed you out. You were invisible, unwelcome, unclean. Children avoided you. Adults cursed you under their breath. Priests told you to stand in the back. You couldn't rent a room in the city. You slept near the very pits you worked in. You earned more than most villagers, sometimes even more than a skilled blacksmith, but you couldn't spend it where it mattered. You had no place in their world, yet they needed you. Without Gong farmers, the towns would drown in filth. Disease would spread faster. Rats and flies would multiply. And yet, even as you kept the city alive, the city looked at you like a ghost. In 1326, a Gong farmer was hired to clean the cesspits beneath Newgate Prison in London. 13 pits. Some hadn't been touched in over 50 years. For 12 nights, he descended into that darkness, clearing out waste so old it had turned to stone at the bottom. On the final night, his ladder snapped. He fell. Witnesses said they heard him scream for hours. No one could go in after him. The gases were too thick. When they pulled him out at sunrise, his body was blue, and his lungs had stopped working. The city buried him. Not in a cemetery, but near the dumping fields. They never even recorded his name. He was just another Gong farmer. But his work, like so many others, made life possible. And maybe that's the most haunting part of this story. These people were the invisible scaffolding of medieval society. They weren't building cathedrals or commanding armies. They weren't writing laws or painting masterpieces, but they kept the streets from flooding with filth. They kept the rats from multiplying. They kept the diseases at bay, even when no one gave them credit. We complain about traffic, or late emails, or not getting enough praise. And yes, those struggles are real. But can you imagine a life where even your breath is offensive to others? Where even your footsteps are shunned? Where the very people you serve pretend you don't exist? That was the life of a Gong farmer. No glory, no recognition, just darkness, decay, and a dignity so deep it didn't need applause. And so the next time someone asks what the worst job in history was, don't think about long hours or bad bosses. Think about a man in the middle of the night, knee-deep in the secrets of a town that pretended to be clean, but working in silence. For people who would never say thank you, the bell rings slowly at dawn, 1, 2, 3 times. You already know what that means. Another death, maybe 2, maybe more. The priest won't go near the house. The neighbors have already boarded their doors shut. And you tighten the cloth around your face, pick up your shovel, and start walking. This is your life now. You are a plague barrier. The last person a dying soul will ever see, and the first to touch them after they've gone cold. The year is 1349. The Black Death has wrapped its hands around Europe like a choking vine. Every street smells of decay. Every cart rolls with bodies. No one knows what causes it. Some say it's God's punishment. Others whisper about foul air or cursed stars. But no one blames you. No one even looks at you, because you've become as invisible as the disease itself. You reach the house and knock. No answer. You push the door gently. It creaks open. The room is dark, too quiet. And then you see her, an old woman, lying on the floor, her eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a scream. Her skin is blackened in spots, her fingers curled next to her. A child, still warm. You don't have time to cry. You don't have time to pray. You wrap them in cloth as gently as you can, but you've done this hundreds of times. Your hands no longer shake. You carry them to the cart, just to moor in a pile of dozens. Some are fresh, some not. You sprinkle herbs over the bodies, not because it works, but because it makes the stench bearable. You wear a long coat soaked in wax, a beak-like mask filled with spices, gloves, if you're lucky. But the truth is, nothing really protects you. You're face to face with the disease every day. You've seen strong men cough blood and die in hours. You've buried priests, knights, beggars, newborns. The plague does not care. Sometimes you feel it in your own body, of fever that comes and goes, a swollen lump under your arm. You tell yourself it's nothing. You keep digging, because if you stop, the dead will pile up in the streets. The dogs will come. The rats will follow. No one else will do it. There are no funerals anymore, no chants, no candles, just mass graves in empty fields. You dig fast, using whatever strength your body has left. You don't remember when you last ate. You sleep in a shed behind the graveyard, too afraid to go home. If you still have a home, at night, the dreams come. The faces of the ones you buried, their mouths moving, but no sound comes out. Sometimes you think you hear your own name being whispered from the ground. You wake up choking on air, wondering if it's your time next. But morning comes, and you stand again, because you have to. There was a man once, a plague barrier like you, named Thomas. He worked outside Florence. One day, he found his sister among the dead. He stopped. He held her face for hours. Then he lay beside her, covered himself in the same cloth, and never got up. No one replaced him. For days, the bodies rotted in the streets. Children walked past their dead mothers. The wells were poisoned. The air turned thick. They had to call in soldiers to burn the homes. Because when the buriers stop, the world stops, and still no one remembers your name. History speaks of kings who fled their cities, of nobles who locked themselves in towers with food and wine, of doctors who wrote theories, but no one speaks of you, the one who stood among the dead and kept digging. They didn't build statues for you. They didn't write your story. But without you, there would be no city left to tell it. Now it's getting dark again. The bell will ring soon. Someone, somewhere, is dying alone. They'll be cold by the time you arrive. You'll carry them gently, lower them into the earth, and cover them with silence. And then, without a word, you'll go back to your shed, because tomorrow it starts all over again, and someone has to do it. It seems harmless enough, doesn't it? Working with fabric, just wool and water, no blood, no fire, no sharp blades. A job that sounds almost peaceful, but peace was never meant for people like you. You are a fuller, and your work begins before the village stirs. The morning fog still clings to the rooftops when you arrive at the workshop. The wool sits in piles, raw, greasy, stiff with sweat and lanolin from the sheep's back. It's your job to clean it, soften it, shape it into cloth that nobility will wear and merchants will trade. But the way you do it, that's the part no one talks about. You dip your arms into a stone trough filled with stale human urine. Yes, urine, warm, yellow, collected from every household in town. Men, women, children. It's poured into barrels and brought to your workshop like wine. The ammonia breaks down the oils in the wool, loosens the fibers. It's effective, and it's deadly. You step barefoot into the vat. The smell hits you like a slap. Strong, acidic, choking. But you don't gag anymore. That was in the first week. You've learned to breathe shallow now. You walk in circles, for hours, stomping, kneading, forcing the urine deep into the wool. Your legs burn, your feet blister. Sometimes the cuts on your skin sting so badly, you have to bite your lip to stop from screaming. But you keep moving, because the cloth must be finished. The traders are waiting. The chemicals soak into your skin. They climb up your legs like ghosts. After a few years, your bones begin to ache. Your chest feels heavy. The headaches don't go away anymore. You don't know the word for toxicity, but your body feels it. Every single day, no one envies you. They cross the street when they see you. Children point at your stained clothes. The village women hold their sleeves over their noses. You smell like rot and piss, no matter how many times you rinse off in the river. No one wants to marry a fuller. No one wants to sit beside one at church. But they all wear the cloth you make, bright reds, deep blues, silks trimmed in wool, softened by your aching feet. They never wonder how it became so smooth, or why their robes feel so light. They never imagined someone walked in human waste for days so their tunic wouldn't itch. You've heard of other fullers who collapsed in the vats. One man in the next town slipped and hit his head. They found him face down, floating in yellow water. No one fetched his body. Not right away. They didn't want to touch it. Didn't want the stench on their hands. They buried him near the riverbank. No stone, no prayers. Just another man whose job was too dirty to remember. Sometimes, when you're alone, you wonder what it's all for. You wonder if your name will ever be spoken in kindness. If your work's so essential, so painful, will ever be valued. But the answer never changes. You are the cloth's secret. You are the hidden thread no one sees. And still, you return, every morning. Because without you, the robes of the lords would remain rough. The blankets of newborns would scratch. The banners of kings would hang limp, unfinished. You won't be painted into a tapestry. You won't be written into a chronicle. But you'll be there anyway, in every smooth fold, in every quiet stitch. And maybe, just maybe, someone will one day ask how that cloth became so soft. And someone will whisper your name. They say, justice must be blind. But what they never say is who swings the sword, who lifts the axe, who tightens the rope while 100 eyes watch and 1,000 more pretend they aren't looking. That person is you. You are the executioner, and while the crowd gathers in the square with excited whispers and morbid fascination, you wait behind a wooden door, alone. The prisoner prays. The priest recites verses. The townspeople prepare to gasp. But you prepare to kill. It didn't start like this. No child dreams of becoming the town's hand of death. Maybe your father did it before you. Maybe the job was offered when no one else dared to take it. Maybe it was forced on you, with a bag of silver and the warning, if you say no, someone else will do it worse. Now it's your life. They bring the condemned in chains. Some scream, some cry, some walk quietly, heads high. You've seen thieves, traitors, innocents, witches, children, some guilty, some not. It's not for you to decide. Your job is to make it quick, to keep the blade sharp, to make sure the rope is knotted just right. You rehearse it in your head like a ritual, not because you enjoy it, but because if you mess up, it becomes a public horror, a botched beheading, a slow strangling, a crowd that turns from fascinated to furious. No one remembers when you do it right, but they never forget when you fail. They throw rotten food, stones, spit. You're the villain, the monster, the necessary evil. And yet, without you, the entire system falls apart. Law becomes words. Punishment becomes empty threat. So you carry the weight. You walk home at night with the blood still on your boots. The people avoid your eyes. The butcher refuses to serve you meat. The innkeeper wipes the table twice after you leave. You've heard them say your touch brings bad luck, that you bring death with your breath. No one wants to sit beside you, no one wants to marry your daughter. Your house is on the edge of town far enough that no one has to see you unless they need to. It's quiet there, too quiet. You grow vegetables, you mend your own shoes. You talk to yourself just to hear a voice that doesn't tremble when you walk into a room. You still remember your first execution. A young man, barely older than a boy, he cried before they tied his hands. You hesitated, just for a second, long enough for him to say, "Please?" That was years ago, but the word still echoes every night. Even now, some executioners drink to forget, others pray. Some go mad, but you just keep going. Not out of pride, not even duty, but because someone has to. The strangest part, you get paid well. You live better than most. You're even given gifts-free bread, sacks of grain by people too afraid to be seen giving them. But money doesn't buy respect, and fear is not the same as acceptance. You are always alone, even in the crowd. They say you are cursed, that your soul is stained, that your children will suffer for your sins. But when the bandits rise, when the war ends and deserters flood the town, when panic spreads and someone must be punished to calm the people they come knocking, and you open the door, you sharpen the blade, you stand on the platform, and when it's done, they look away again, as if you vanished, as if you were never there. History remembers kings and judges. It writes down who passed the law and who broke it. But it never remembers the hand that carried out the sentence. No one writes your story, because your story is the one they don't want to tell. But it is yours nonetheless, and tonight, as you hang your blood-stained cloak by the fire, as you sit in silence with a bowl of soup gone cold, you remind yourself of the only truth that keeps you going. You didn't choose this, but you never looked away. They say castles are symbols of glory, stone monuments to power, but no one ever talks about who lifted those stones, who strained every tendon to raise walls that would never bear their name. That someone is you. You're not a knight. You're not a stonemason. You're a man who walks. That's your whole job, to walk, for hours, inside a wooden wheel the size of a cottage, built vertically and hung high above the ground, a giant hamster wheel. But instead of running for fun, you're running for stone, for ropes, for lives. You step inside, and the wheel creaks beneath your weight. It tilts with the rope, which stretches down to a massive slab of rock on the ground far below. You begin to walk, slowly at first. The wheel turns, the rope tightens, the stone begins to rise. You don't stop walking. The more you walk, the higher it goes. A 3-ton boulder meant to sit in a fortress wall. If you stop, the stone falls. If you slip, the weight jerks and the whole wheel shakes violently. Sometimes the axles crack, sometimes the rope frays. You've heard stories of wheels snapping loose and flying off the scaffolding, of men crushed by the very machines they powered. You try not to think about that. There's no harness, no brakes, just your feet, the wood, and gravity. You walk, not for glory, not for gold, but because someone has to get the stones up to the top, and beasts can't be trusted this high. So the architects turned to the only thing more dependable than an ox. A desperate man. They pay you just enough to survive. Sometimes you get bread, sometimes beer, never both on the same day. Your hands are full of splinters. Your back is permanently arched, Your knees ache with each step, and you've begun to forget what it feels like to lie down without the ground spinning under you. Night. You dream of falling, not just the stones. You dream of walking forever and never being allowed to stop. Sometimes you see the nobles who live inside the castle once it's done. They ride past in silks, laughing, pointing, admiring the height of the tower, the beauty of the battlements. They never look up to see you, sweating, shaking, bleeding from your feet, because men like you aren't part of the castle. You're part of the scaffolding, temporary, replaceable, forgotten, but you remember. You remember the sound the wheel makes when it groans under pressure. You remember the voice of your friend who fell last winter. His scream still hangs in the air whenever the wind picks up. You remember that if you stop walking, the whole thing stops. Not just the stone, the vision, the progress, the illusion of greatness, and so you keep walking. You don't ask for much, just that the stone doesn't fall, that your feet don't give out, that, maybe, when the castle stands tall for 100 years, anyone will remember that it wasn't magic that raised it. It was you, your legs, your breath, your broken bones, and if they don't remember, then at least the stone will. It will remember the rhythm of your footsteps, the sweat that soaked the rope, the silence you carried with you as you walked, alone, in the shadows of a dream you were never meant to live in. You hear them before you see them, the scratching behind the walls, the tiny feet pattering across rafters while the village sleeps, their teeth always chewing wood, cloth, skin, bone. People shudder at the sound. Mothers pull children closer. The priest prays against disease. But you lean in closer, because this is your job. You are a rat catcher. No one thanks you. No one smiles when you walk past. They want you when the infestation begins, when the filth starts to move. But once the squeaking stops, once the fear passes, they forget. Just like that, but the rats never forget. You start early, just before dawn. You check the traps you set the night before. Tiny metal jaws snapped shut on twitching bodies. The stronger ones escape. The clever ones wait. You carry a clothed sack and a long stick with iron teeth. Sometimes you bring a dog if it's brave enough to follow you. Most aren't. You crawl under floorboards, into sewers, behind ovens, and into attics thick with cobwebs. You squeeze your body into the same darkness that rats thrive in. You hear their breathing before you see them, small, quick, angry. You kill them quickly when you can, but they're fast, and they fight back. Their teeth draw blood. You've been bitten so many times the scars overlap. You wrap your hands in cloth, but it soaks through fast. And the fear of what's inside those bites never leaves. Because in this world, rats don't just mean filth. They mean death. You've seen what happens when you're too late. A family coughing in bed, covered in boils. A child with glassy eyes and a shaking fever. The rats crawl through towns like smoke, and behind them comes the plague. That black, hungry thing that eats villagers whole. So you work faster. You whisper to yourself when you're alone in basements. Not to summon magic, just to keep yourself company. You hum songs your mother used to sing, back when the world still felt clean. Sometimes, when there are too many, you lay out poison. You know it's dangerous. You've seen a dog die from a single nibble of your bait. You've heard the rumors that rat catchers spread disease more than they prevent it, that you carry filth in your breath. You don't argue anymore. You're too tired. Your clothes are stained. Your boots are soaked. You haven't eaten since yesterday. And still, the rats are coming. You meet others sometimes. Fellow catchers, wandering between towns with their sacks and bruises. You don't talk much. Just a nod, a shared glance, a silent understanding that this life isn't for the lucky, it's for the forgotten. There was an old man once, Willem, from the next village. He caught rats until he went blind. They say he heard them even in his dreams. One night he crawled into a cellar and never came out. When they found him, his bag was full, but so were his hands, clutching 3 rats that had bitten deep into his skin, even in death. They buried him beside the well. No stone, no prayers, just dirt and silence. You carry on, day after day, because when the rats come back, and they always do, they don't knock. They slide in through cracks. They bring teeth and fleas and plague. And if you're not there, they win, so you keep walking. Into homes where you're not welcome. Into filth no one wants to see. Into a job no one wants to remember. But history was never built by clean hands. Sometimes it was held back just barely by the broken ones. You wake up before the prince does. Not because you want to, but because you have to. The servants dress him in silk. They bring him honeyed bread, warmed milk, sweet fruits from the gardens. You sit on a wooden bench nearby. You eat stale porridge, if there's enough. He's the future king, and you are his shadow. You follow him everywhere, to his lessons, to his games. You sleep not far from his chambers. You know the sound of his voice before it cracks. You know his moods better than your own. And when he disobeys, when he curses the tutor or refuses to study or slaps the maid, they don't raise their hand at him. They turn to you. You are the whipping boy. The pain meant for him lands on your back, because in this strange logic of royal blood, a prince cannot be struck. Not by a hand, not by a rod, not even by words too sharp. He is chosen by birth, touched by God. To strike him is to insult the heavens, so they strike you instead. The idea is simple. If the prince sees someone suffer for his action, someone close, someone real, he'll feel guilt. He'll correct himself. He'll learn. But he never does. Not really. He laughs sometimes, says sorry with a smirk, looks away when the lash falls. You bite your lip and try not to cry, because crying only makes them hit harder. The bruises bloom like blue flowers across your back. Some fade, some stay. You stop counting the lashes after the first few months. You learn to breathe through the pain, to disappear into your mind while your body is pulled apart, piece by piece. And yet, in the strangest way, you are his only friend. He plays chess with you, throws a ball toward you when no one's looking, shares a joke, a secret, a soft moment by the fire. But you know what it is. It's not friendship, it's loneliness, wearing a crown, and you're the only one close enough to understand it. You don't get titles, you don't get fine clothes, but you know the prince's heart may be better than he does. You know when he's scared, when he wants to cry but won't, when he looks at the throne and wonders what it will cost. Sometimes you hate him, but sometimes when he slips you a piece of cake under the table or leaves you a blanket on a cold night, you hate yourself for not hating him more. You wonder what happens when he grows up, when he becomes king. Will he remember you? Will he speak your name in the grand halls of power? Will he ever say, "This boy bled for me when I didn't know better"? Or will he forget? Most do. There are no paintings of whipping boys, no poems, no stories passed down. just backs that healed wrong, names buried in servant records, boys who became invisible, even as they carried the weight of royalty in their bruises. There was one once, in a far-off kingdom, the prince he served became cruel, violent. No matter how many times the boy was beaten, nothing changed. One day, during a hunt, the boy stood between the prince and a stag, refused to move. The prince struck him across the face with his riding crop harder than ever before. The boy never flinched. They say the prince broke down in tears right there, threw away his bow, refused to hunt again. But no one remembers the boy's name, only the prince's mercy. That's how history works. You are not written into it. You are the lesson that made the hero better. You are the pain that shaped the noble heart. But you walk away alone, your back still raw, your name still unknown, and still, when they call you, you come. Because someone has to stand between power and punishment, even if it means taking the fall. Every single time. There's no sun where you work, no wind, no sky, just earth. Endless, suffocating earth, pressing down from above, and you, crawling into its lungs. You are a coal miner. But this isn't the mining of machines and helmets and steel beams. This is medieval mining. Your lamp is a flickering candle. Your tunnel is barely wide enough to fit your shoulders. You dig lying on your stomach, face in the dust, using a pickaxe made of wood and iron that splinters in your hands. The air is thick, damp, wrong. It tastes like stone and rot. You breathe slowly, not because you want to, but because there's so little air to go around. You hear your heart beat in your ears, louder than your breath. You have to listen. Always listen, because caves don't scream before they collapse. You were only a boy when you started, small enough to fit into holes grown men couldn't. That's what they wanted. Children with nimble fingers and soft bones. They sent you in first. Told you to bring back what you could carry. You did. Now you're grown, but the tunnels have only gotten smaller and darker and more dangerous. Your fingers are cracked and black. Your nails no longer grow straight. Your lungs, those are the worst part. You cough at night. Deep, rattling coughs that pull up flecks of black. You spit them into the corner of your room and hope it's not what you think it is. You've seen others die, quietly, slowly, their skin pale, their eyes sunken, their breath short. They call it the miner's curse. No one knows what it is. Just that once the coughing starts, it never stops. Sometimes, though, death comes faster. You were there the day the tunnel collapsed. 8 men inside. A sound like thunder, then silence. You dug for hours, bare hands tearing at stone. By the time you reached them, they were gone. Faces frozen in the dark, mouths open, eyes full of dust. They'd suffocated in the same place they'd eaten their last bread. You didn't cry. Couldn't you still had to go back in the next morning, and every morning after? Because coal means fire, and fire means heat, and heat means life in winter. You dig not for wealth or pride, but because people above need to stay warm. The Lord's hearth must burn, the baker's oven must rise, the blacksmith's forge must sing, and none of that happens without the black stone you claw from the earth. But they never see you. You come up only when the sun is already low. Your face is unrecognizable, covered in soot. Your clothes are stiff with sweat and filth. You walk through the village like a ghost. No one greets you. No one asks how deep you went today. They just turn their heads as you pass, the same way they do when they hear coughing in the dark. You try not to be angry, try not to hate them, but some nights, lying on your straw mat, with your lungs burning, you wonder what it would be like to live above the ground, to breathe clean air, to see clouds, to walk without fear of the ceiling caving in above you. You wonder if the stars look different when your hands aren't stained with coal. There was a man, once Matteo, from the northern ridge. He kept a small journal, even though he barely knew how to write, just lines, scratched into parchment with charcoal. He wrote about the silence of the tunnels, about the smell of sweat and stone, about the time he found a fossil in the wall like a fish, but made of rock. He died a week later. His tunnel collapsed after rain softened the earth. They never found his body, but the journal remained. A single page, smudged with fingerprints, ends with 4 words, "I am still digging." You understand that, because even if the walls close in, even if no one ever sees you, even if the fire above never flickers in your name, you will still dig, because someone has to, before the well runs dry, before the bread is baked, before the soldiers finish sharpening their swords. You're already walking, it's barely morning. The streets are still sleeping, but your body isn't. It aches before you even open your eyes, your shoulders are stiff, your knees feel hollow. The blisters on your feet have hardened into scars. You pulled the wooden yoke across your back, the ropes tied tight to 2 iron buckets, and begin your first walk of the day. You are a water carrier, and your job is simple. Fetch water from the public well or river, and deliver it, over and over, from the moment the sun breaks through the mist, until it disappears behind the rooftops again. Simple, they say. But what no one says is how heavy it is. Each bucket holds 20 kilos, 40 on your shoulders, pulling your spine into a question mark. And the roads are not smooth. Cobblestones, mud, frozen patches in winter, burning dust in summer. You slip, you fall, you bruise, and when you spill even a drop, the baker scowls. The innkeeper curses. You're late, they say, as if they've ever tried carrying the weight of their lives on their back. The buckets dig into your skin. Your hands go numb from the cold. In the summer, it's worse, the smell of sewage in the streets, the rot of spoiled meat, the flies, so you walk faster, hoping the stench won't seep into the water before it reaches their table. Sometimes it does anyway. No one thanks you. They expect you, like the rising sun or the toll of the bell. You're just there, always, quiet, bent forward, walking with the sound of sloshing water like a sad song behind you. Most water carriers are women, some are children. You've seen girls no older than 10 struggling with buckets twice their size, slipping down alleyways with broken shoes, wiping tears when no one's looking. You try to help, but your hands are already full, and your route is long. You carry to the butcher, the weaver, the carpenter, the apothecary, then back to the well, then out again, then again. You lose count by midday. You forget how many times you've walked this path. You only remember how it feels when your shoulders start to bleed, and when it rains. You carry in the rain when your child is sick. You carry when your husband is buried. You carry because the village doesn't stop needing water just because your life is falling apart. There was a woman once, old even by village standards. Her back was so bent she couldn't look forward any more, only down. They called her Mother Rock because nothing could move her. Even in the snow, she walked. They say the buckets had carved into her shoulders so deep, you could see the lines even after she passed. The priest said a short prayer, then the village kept going, because there was no time to mourn someone who was never really seen. But you saw her. You still remember the way she walked, slow, steady, never asking for help, just like you do now. You wonder sometimes, in those quiet moments between deliveries, what it would feel like to be light, to walk for pleasure, to stretch your arms without pain, to wake up without the taste of iron in your throat, to know that tomorrow someone else might carry the weight. But deep down, you already know the answer, because in your world, water doesn't move itself, it waits, and people like you, forgotten, tired, invisible, bring it to life. You don't wear armor, you don't ride horses, you don't hold a title, but you carry the village, every street, every pot, every mouth, every breath. You carry them all, and when the day is done, and you finally set the buckets down, the silence that follows is the only proof you were ever there at all. You've heard their stories now, not the kings, not the knights, not the scholars or saints, but the ones history chose not to remember. The woman who bled in the swamp, so a healer could look wise. The man who drowned in waste, so a town could forget its own filth. The soul who buried the dead alone until death came for him, too. The worker who stomped cloth in piss, so the rich could feel soft. The executioner who carried out justice, but never lived free. The human cog who walked in circles just to raise someone else's walls. The rat catcher who entered darkness to keep others safe from it. The child whipped for royal sins he never committed. The miner who dug so deep, the sun forgot his face. And the woman who carried water, step by step, with no name, no thanks, and no end. They were the ones who held up the world, not with swords, or scrolls, or sermons, but with hands that cracked, lungs that burned, and backs that broke. They built the kingdoms, they fed the cities, they buried the dead, they carried the filth, the fire, the silence. They kept the wheels of history turning, even when those wheels crushed them. And yet, they are invisible. They are not in your textbooks. They are not carved into statues. They are not sung about in poems. But they are real, and without them, none of the rest of it ever happens. So the next time someone talks about greatness, about who mattered, about who changed the world, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful people in history were the ones who never had the chance to speak, and now, finally, someone has spoken for them. Maybe that someone is you. If this story moved you, share it. Let their names echo. Let their lives be known, not as a footnote, not as a joke, but as the bones beneath the marble, the blood behind the banner, the truth behind the myth. Because they were always there. Someone just had to look down far enough to see them.